Hi, welcome to the ISSA Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle Virtual Meetup. My name is Randall Fritchie, and I'll be your moderator today. The ISSA Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle Virtual Meetup program is geared to pre-professional and entry-level ISSA members. Based on feedback from the pre-professional meetup at our ISSA International Conference, the virtual meetup program provides our pre-professional and entry-level members the opportunity to meet experts in a given specialty of cybersecurity in an informal and relaxed venue. During the virtual meetup this afternoon, you can ask questions using Google Hangouts, the chat feature, and learn firsthand from computer forensics experts what it takes to get the job, what skills are necessary, how to obtain the skills, as well as any question that might help in preparing you towards working in the field and getting the job. We hope to continue the virtual meetups with additional guests and topics based on your feedback. So we will go ahead and get started. I want to introduce myself officially. My name is Randall Fritchie. I am an ISSA fellow. I have been a member of the ISSA now for almost 12 years. I was the president of the ISSA Kentuckiana chapter for the last 8 years. And I'm now in Denver and getting plugged in with this fantastic chapter here in Denver. I want to introduce our panelists today. The first panelist is Geraldine Martis. I will have them go around and introduce themselves. The second panelist is Josiah Inman. So Geraldine, can you introduce yourself? And we are not hearing you, Geraldine, if you're talking.
Okay, let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm president of Applied Cognitive Solutions, which is a digital forensics, e-discovery, and data recovery company. I also teach digital forensics at the University of Houston.
Great. Welcome. Our next panelist is Josiah Inman. Josiah?
All right, thanks. My name is Josiah Inman. I work for Catholic Health Initiatives in the incident response world of forensics. So not so much in the legal e-discovery side, but pretty much all in the incident response side of forensics. So.
Perfect. So before we get started, I want to remind everybody that's watching, if you have a question for the panelists, please submit the question using the Hangouts chat function on your screen. If you cannot see that chat function on your left, there should be a little toolbar there at the top. There's a blue box that says chat. If you click that, then you can participate in the group chat. This event will go until 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is being recorded. So once it's completed and we get it uploaded, you can go to the ISSA's YouTube channel, and you can view this and all the past virtual meetups that we have had. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start out with a question here for both panelists. So Geraldine, can you start out for us? Describe your area of expertise, how you got started in the industry, and what you have done to be successful in this business. And we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Thank you.
Great. The cutout.
Okay, you're cutting out and we're not hearing anything. Yeah, we're still not hearing you. Josiah, can you go ahead and take it first, and then and let that Geraldine get that worked out?
Yeah, no problem. Just want to make sure I'm covering all the points. So how I got started and kind of what made me successful.
Yeah, your areas of expertise, how you got started, and what you've done to be successful in the security and in specifically forensics.
Okay. Yeah. I got started kind of self-starter in computers 15 years ago, maybe. and then went to Arapahoe Community College here in Colorado, and that kind of gave me a basic understanding of computers. And if I might go a little too far back, so I'm sorry, you might have to tell me to be quiet. But and then from there, I attended New York Institute of Technology, a computer science program, but ended up just because of money, kind of cut that short into the Bachelor of Professional Studies. But regardless, I just have a passion for computers and forensics and just how computers work. And I think that my time, my jobs and different things I've done, from being small business consultant to application developer to reversing malware to incident response, all of these different things kind of give me a holistic view, and that plays an important role in forensics. And sometimes one of the hard things in incident response forensics is, there's just so many different things. I was on a red team one time and somebody told me to be successful at hacking forensics and being able to replay something as an intrusion analyst, which I did for the National Guard cyber defense team. You got to know everything about everything. And sometimes, I know that's a big statement, but sometimes you just always got to be learning something new. And it the learning never stops. So I think I am successful because I am constantly looking for a new challenge. And whether it's forensics, whether it's just security, whatever it is, you're never, it's kind of like going to the gym, right? You've never reached the peak. You always got to keep going and maintaining. And I think that's what's made me successful in security, just constant learning.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I did want to make one correction real quick. It's not the blue chat button, it is the blue Q&A button that you will need to hit if you want to submit a question. So Josiah, let me circle back here for a real quick question.
Yep.
Obviously you did not, your first job, you did not get assigned to do computer forensics. What do you feel like are some of the basic skills that our audience might be should pursue to sort of build up that expertise to be able to get into security in general and forensics specifically?
I think my opinion would be critical thinking is kind of if you're not inquisitive, if you're not a person who asks the why questions, then I think sometimes that might not be the right fit for you. I'm asked the why. I'm not satisfied at, this works because this. It's like, okay, well, let's get down to the bottom of how this works. And I think that inquisitive mindset is what helps drive good investigators, whether that's forensic investigators or computer incident. Like I said, I use a lot more incident response forensics. So we're kind of trying to replay things and decide how that happened, etc.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good point to make that when we talk to Geraldine, she may be more in the field of responding to something that requires immediate forensics, where you are engaged a lot more involved with an incident has happened and we need to do some forensics around that incident to kind of see what's happened.
Yep, exactly. If there was, we do have a part of our team, and I assist with at times a legal forensics, e-discovery, legal hold, kind of that whole what we would consider more civil legal matters. And then I kind of work more in the, hey, server was hacked, now let's forensically look at it. Where did the people go? How did they go there? And using some of the tools that are more of an incident response forensics, where we're not is tied down as much by some of the intricacies of chain of custodies and some of these things that get at times in the way. I wouldn't say in the way, but make it a little more difficult in the legal discovery side.
Awesome. Geraldine, are you backup functional here on audio yet? Okay, yeah, I think she's still working to get that functional. So let me come back to that with her. So we've kind of covered how you got into computer security, your educational background. As part of your function within computer security, you also have to do incident response, computer forensics. What do you feel like you like best about that forensics role, the incident response and forensics?
I like the everyday challenge of just kind of trying to figure out what folks were doing. Like I said, comes down to the why questions. I think you're looking to constantly just kind of dig deeper, and there's this intriguing challenge that you have when you have to dig through an incident. You look at something at surface level, it looks to be one way, but as you dig deeper and kind of peel the layers back, or look at it from a deeper kind of more technical level, it's just there's an excitement with kind of tracking down what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of nerdy, but I get excited for this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's if you talk about computer security, there are so many different domains within security and so many different job functions within security, including analysts and auditors, and those folks tend to be on the lower end of the technical knowledge. And then when you get more towards incident response and forensics especially, that's when you get really pretty deep into the technical. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think that it takes a high level of technical background, in my opinion. Everybody that I know or have worked, when you're looking through a computer from at a forensics level, it's there's just a high level of detail that attention to detail and things that you need to make sure that you're educated on. From how a file system works at the most basic level. I had a conversation with somebody the other day around transistor logic, who's an IT person, and it's like, just understanding how computers work and how a hard drive works, and having the inquisitive desire to know how that stuff works, not just at a surface level, but really the intricacies of it. If that sort of thing is the big interest, then that this is definitely in the right alley.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, sort of we were talking before we started here and kind of commenting on, you don't just get out of school and go right into a forensics job. You really have to have that deep technical understanding of how computers work, hardware, software, how does the software talk to the hardware, OSI model, switching, networking, application layer, network layer, physical layer. All of those things are very important when it comes to computer security, and even much so for forensics as well. Geraldine, are you back up to be able to test yet?
I'm hoping. Can you hear me now?
We certainly can.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, you sound good.
Excellent.
So, is there anything you want to jump in on the conversation we've been having, or can I circle back to the initial question, maybe?
I would just echo what you have been saying. I think a key attribute that people have to have is curiosity. If you see something you haven't seen before, or you're not sure what it is, you have to be willing to go out and learn the latest and greatest and newest and reach out. Otherwise, you're in the wrong area.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me circle back here to sort of get background on you, Geraldine, so everyone kind of understands where you're coming from, your areas of expertise, how you got started, and kind of what you do every day, and what you've done to be successful in this business.
I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I actually come from different background. I have an undergraduate degree in English and political science and a master's degree in business. Wow. And I got into the computer end of things. I've been involved with computers since punch card days, so that tells you how old I am. And I've always been interested in them. But the forensics end of it, I started working with a company and became more and more interested, took courses, and just kept learning, got certified in Access Data's tool, and just basically, in a large sense, have read a lot of books, gone to a lot of conferences. So my background is not the standard one that you would find usually in this field.
Mm-hmm. Okay. A question for both of you. I'll start with Geraldine here. Can you maybe describe to me a typical engagement, or why you might be called in, and kind of high level, what you'll do there, kind of the steps, how you engage with that forensics, what are you doing there when you are called in to be engaged?
Sure. Our company does only civil matters. That means that we don't do anything that's in the criminal arena. They tend to be somewhat different. And because we're a consulting company, we work with attorneys, law firms, large corporations, individuals, whoever thinks that there is the possibility of having evidence on some sort of device or an account. So usually we're brought in. Quite often it's called theft of intellectual property. Somebody leaves a company and there's a thought that there may be some information that went with them that shouldn't have. So we work under a letter of agreement from our client that gives us permission to do the work, and then we work within a scope, because as you know, if you were looking at everything on a system, almost nobody has enough time to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Josiah? Kind of a typical incident, maybe?
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so what's typical for us, I actually, it's funny, I used to do some, what was it, forensics toolkit back in the day for a little small consulting company. It was my first exposure, like mid-2000s, around, and when she was talking, it reminded me of that, because we used to do a lot of civil lawsuit, forensics, insurance law stuff. Anyway, that was just a reminiscent item. But yeah, from a forensics side for us, we have kind of the in-house forensics team. Just touch on it real quick, but they kind of do the legal hold, or holding on to some evidence of data. There might be a employee that was misusing resources, or trying to access payroll files, or whatever the case may be. And we have kind of a leg of our team that investigates more of the legal side of things to protect the organization. So for lawsuits or anything like that. And then myself, I'm more involved into the incident response side, and that usually starts with some sort of event happening. And not every event requires forensics, but many events, and really in some instances to find kind of people acting, or a piece of malware doing something within your network. There's a point where we kind of narrow down a scope to, let's say, a server, maybe a web server, something gets breached, and then we have to be able to determine in the world of healthcare, did somebody access something, or did they not access something? Is there credible evidence that they move beyond this computer to another computer, or from one web server to another web server? And so the artifacts that we look for and are gathering and analyzing really deal with more intrusion analysis, and kind of a forensics actions that somebody might be taking. Most of those, in fact, 99% of those aren't necessarily a legal case. We might preserve evidence in the same format, chains of custody, that sort of stuff, but most of it's really focused in on telling a story of what happened, and just using a scientific method that's repeatable, whether I did it, or one of my associates did it, or another third party did it. We could all come to the same agreements on what was accessed and how it was accessed.
Very nice. And I think what you just said speaks to sort of a follow-up question with, and I'll throw this out to Geraldine. What actually does forensics mean? A lot of folks on the call might be unclear about that, or might be trying to get more information on that. What does forensics actually mean to you?
Well, forensics means to me, the way we put it is, if you think that there's evidence that's been captured in a digital way, to secure that information and then examine it in a forensically sound manner. Much of what has been said that it needs to be approached such that you can determine what happened, if you can make that determination, and then to explain, if you can, and sometimes you can't, what the information provides. I know that sounds really nebulous, but one of the things that I mentioned when we were talking about doing this is that depending on what you're doing and what you're talking about, digital forensics can be so many things. It can be incident response, it can be looking for that kind of information, it can be somebody taking an external drive away and trying to see what happened in that instance. It can be somebody taking photos with their smartphone and looking at that. It can be social media, it can be network. There's so many different kinds of forensics, and as I mentioned before, it is somewhat different in the law enforcement, criminal defense end of things versus civil. So that's our take on it. I'm sure that sounds complicated. Maybe you can simplify it.
Nice. Josiah, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would just say, in a lot of the things that I've looked at, my short answer to the question would be, it's just scientific method, of discovering whatever it is you're trying to discover. That could be from, papers to digital forensics, stuff that Drillon's been talking about. But the big key is that, or the key that we strive to use, is that everybody comes back to the same hypothesis or the same theory or evidence, and that if that's the case, we're using a good, sound scientific method, and that's, we try to do everything in kind of the forensics world that way, so that if we were suing each other and I hired someone and you hired someone, of course I have certain motives and you have certain motives, but we all come to the same agreements. And same with in criminal world, or in those areas, if you hire your own forensics people and your smartphone or whatever, and somebody else did and they accused you of a crime, that everybody would come to the same conclusion. And I think that's an important part. It's a science, and sometimes get wrapped around the tools we use, and sometimes I tell people, it's not necessarily about the tools all the time. It's about the methodology, that whether I did it by hand or I used a tool, we would come to the same result.
Great point. Great point. So I think we have kind of covered what is forensics. The typical case where we would need forensics. We're talking about a civil matter, talking about an incident response for potentially a technical issue or potentially a breach of some kind. So I guess what I would ask next to you both would be, if you were looking for to hire a consultant to do that, or a coworker, what sort of background, education, certification would you be looking for that person to be successful in that career? Geraldine?
Again, I think it would depend on what the position was. I agree with Josiah that you have to be able to have a proper methodology when you're looking at the data. I think sometimes two people may reach a different conclusion about what the data means, but nonetheless they should be looking at the same data. In terms of certification, as far as I know, there is no single certification that people ask for in this field. If you look at the job descriptions, some people want the vendor certification, some people want some of the other ones like CCE or the SANS. There's the new ISSA squared one. So there are a range of certifications. There are also now a number of academic programs which really weren't widely available, say, 15 years ago. So that's another way to get in. I think in terms of qualifications, though, the more you know, and I think this has been said before, about the hardware, about the software, about the OS, about the applications, the more experience you can get, the better. The more you know about what you're dealing with, the better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Josiah?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And yeah, I mean, there's I have a SANS forensics kind of certification. That's kind of my role of certification size, you might say. But I was just looking even the other day, Kaplan University is, so they have a master's of forensics, or even just I think they even have an undergraduate. Sorry, I was trying to find the right words there. An undergraduate forensics degree as well, and I think that you're right that a lot more institutes are kind of hopping on to the forensics or just information systems. Back when I got my associates and bachelor's, it was kind of, you did computer information systems or you did computer science, and it was kind of the A or the B option. But now there's a lot of very specific kind of degrees, you might say, in the world of IT. But I think that the broader the spectrum of things that or can know, I think that's more valuable to a hiring manager or somebody like that says, hey, oh, this guy knows forensics or has a degree in that. But they also have done, they managed a server farm, or they did Citrix, or they did this, so that when there's, an incident that involves some of those things, you kind of have that dual-honed expertise, in multiple areas.
Yeah, and my sort of input to that would be, check and see what you guys think about this. But the folks that I find that are in this business, in that particular specialty of security, and who are really good at it, are the folks who kind of started out. This goes back to several of the meetups we've had before. How do I get into security in general? A lot of people are interested in getting into security from IT. My opinion is that, start out at help desk. Start answering the phone. Start trying to help folks troubleshoot problems that they're having with their technology, whether that's an application, whether that's with their Windows operating system, or with something like that. And then as you work your way up, maybe you get into the networking side, maybe you get into the hardware side or the server side or even the application side. A lot of application developers kind of come that way. And I don't think that you're going to start out from day one and walk in the door and get a job as a forensic specialist. And so in security, the Security Plus, I think, is a very good broad certification that you can get without even having a degree. And I think that shows your knowledge and also your incentive to be in security. Certainly the Certified Ethical Hacker would be one that touches on forensics also, as well as the tool sets that would be used for hacking, so that you have a really good understanding of some of the tools and techniques that people use to attack systems. I think that's also a very good foundation of knowledge. And then the EC Council also has their Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator, and that's targeted more towards incident response and forensics. And if you can take and pass that, I think you have a very good foundational level of knowledge in that. And I did actually take that myself, and I can tell you that in addition to the technology and knowing which registry key does this, and how do you restore the recycle bin, you also have to know about the chain of custody. You also have to know about the rules of evidence, because as experts have been saying, you have to understand how to do things in a forensically sound manner, but you also have to understand how to do things in a legally sound manner as well. Because if you gather this evidence, whether Geraldine is gathering it for a civil case or Josiah is gathering it for an incident, if they want to pursue that, they're going to have to gather that evidence in a way that doesn't violate the chain of custody, that's going to be legally admissible in court, and adheres to the rules of evidence. So I think that broad level of knowledge is very important. You guys agree with me on that? Either?
I'll go ahead then. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I teach digital forensics at the University of Houston, and one of the first things we talk about is things like the Fourth Amendment and the chain of custody, and why do we do things the way we do them. A lot of the underpinning for how you have to go about the methodology lies in the field of law. And so if you don't have at least a pretty good, I mean, not to be an attorney, but to know when you need to stop and say, consult an attorney, or if you have any questions about what you're doing, and also absolutely making sure you have the legal authority to be doing what you're doing, to be in possession of, for example, the data that you have in your possession. That is, in my experience and opinion, extremely important.
Josiah, anything you want to add there?
No, I mean, I'd absolutely agree. And yeah, and especially if you're dealing in forensics. Well, I mean, even in the organization, you know, that I work for, you know, she touched on a really good point of having the authority to do what you do, and just kind of like in a lot of industries in the world of security, of just making sure that you're in the space that you should be in, and you're investigating things that you should be in. And sometimes those scopes are very limited, and you only have kind of a certain permission scope to evaluate. And I know you touched on it earlier, but you know, sometimes that might be a very narrow scope. It might be, hey, you can only look here, you know, or you can only look there, and that's within the legal scope. So yeah. But yeah, overall, absolutely agree.
Excellent. So, so we kind of talked about, you know, forensics. What is forensics? What do you do in the field of forensics, incident response? Kind of sort of a background we would need to get into that field if we're interested. And the next question I'm going to give to Josiah first. What are some of the tools that maybe you use or you might recommend that our viewers look into and kind of become familiar with in forensics or even incident response?
Yeah, no problem. So there's a lot of tools, and there's a lot of really expensive tools in the world of digital forensics. But you know, one of my kind of my go-to place, you know, the SANS SIFT workstation. It's what I was trained on a lot. It's open source. It doesn't cost you anything. You can download it. It runs in a virtual machine, and there's a plethora of very good tools on there. You know, you can get some trial versions of some different FTKs or access data tools, some registry rippers, some of that sort of stuff. But I think, you know, if you want to kind of I tell people as they, you know, just friends of mine or different people that are kind of getting into forensics, or if they ask me questions, there's a pretty good forensics wiki. I think it's forensicswiki.org if I remember right, and there's a lot of tools out there, and a lot of good walkthroughs, and the SIFT workstation, and it's got a lot of good YouTube videos and walkthroughs if you want to play around, you know, and nothing's better than your own use case, right? So you take an SD card or a hard drive and you do something with it, and then you know, you kind of image it and read back through it and just kind of look from a technical side of things. If you want to study a little bit more kind of in the and there's some good tools. Sorry, I guess I didn't mention very many tool names, but you know, things like the sleuth kit I use a lot on hard drive for incident response. Use volatility, which kind of is a memory analyzer, and I know that I crossed the line between incident response and forensics, but we use those tools both to paint different parts of pictures in different states of where people are or what they were doing. So yeah, you know, these are all open source. The sleuth kit is kind of hard drive based, volatility kind of a memory based tool. I play around with those probably the most. In general, we use a bunch of other tools. F-Response kind of allows us to remote into machines within the enterprise and pull forensics image data off them while they're live. You know, that's more of an enterprise level tool, but I know that they have some trial versions and things out there if people want to play around with. And you know, there's some other tools out there. Probably, I think I have a good list of them somewhere, but I know that on the forensics wiki they have a whole bunch of them, how to use them, you know, not from necessarily a legal standpoint, but you know, if you're going to play around, just want to kind of learn around some tools, I think it's a good starting place.
Geraldine, do you know of any tools that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I agree that Autopsy is a free tool. You can download it. It's a good place to start, and as he was saying, Josiah was saying, that you can start just exploring, you can also download from the commercial vendor. Access Data has a free tool that's wonderful called FTK Imager, and you can use it to image and start, I call it poking around and look at things. InCase also has a free imager. Those are two commercial tools. They are expensive. If you have thousands of dollars, they're both good tools. Another kind of demo version, it's a little bit better than a demo. It used to be free, but I think it's now $50, is ProDiscover, and it gives you a little bit different version, but it's a good tool to use. And then, you know, just Google and start looking, because there are all sorts of less expensive and free versions of tools that you can just start looking at data. But yeah, the wiki is a really good place to start.
Okay.
Yeah, and there one more tool I forgot to mention. I was waiting to see if she was going to mention it before I threw it out there. But Internet Evidence Finder is another tool that we use, and they also have some free tools out there for imaging and NERSoft. And there's some other, if you're just doing a Google search, you're going to find a bunch of little tools. And I try to work or practice, or if I'm around showing something for a little a case or whatever, or we're doing kind of training within the team, we try to just find a little use case. Hey, here's some files, we went and deleted them, maybe we had some video files, we put them on an old hard drive, we maybe do stuff, try to hide them or do whatever we're doing, and then we take and image that, get a free imager. FTK Imager is pretty much what I use almost all the time. And we'll take that image and then we'll start throwing different tools at it. Hey, let's try and do this. Let's see the file times that were modified, or whatever the objective is. So I think sometimes if you use like that use case approach, hey, I want to find out X. What time was it last written, or whatever, and then kind of work from that. Sometimes that can help you put together kind of a structure of doing things versus kind of just, oh, I have this tool, it's so daunting, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing.
Very, very good. And I did want to, for those who don't know, Josiah had mentioned the FTK, and that would be the forensic toolkit, sort of a general term for some of these tools. Is that correct?
Yeah, FTK is Forensics Toolkit, and they have an imager, as well as I'm trying to remember the name right off the top of my head of the Internet Evidence Finder. It's called IEF. They have another imager. They have a memory imager, and they have a hard drive imager, both. And the FTK imager will do both as well. And then I think InCase has one as well that was already mentioned.
Would you agree that the ability to work in this field would also be highly dependent on the size and type of company that you work for? Certainly a company with 3 employees may not have their own incident response and forensics teams, and if they have that need, maybe they don't even know it, or maybe they have to outsource that. But certainly in healthcare, retail, financial, and the larger companies certainly would have more potential to have a forensics team, a larger security team. Would you agree with that, Josiah?
Yeah, I would say larger enterprise teams have kind of their in-house. In the example where I work, we kind of have the in-house level 1. We would say, we're going to go paint a picture, make sure leadership can make informed decisions from the data that we've provided, and then we're going to hire a consultant. Especially if it's something that deals with loss of important data, or there's other legal ramifications that might be being pursued. And so it's important to follow, like was mentioned earlier, chains of custody, these sorts of basic principles of forensics, because a lot of times we'll put together our initial report, and then a consulting company like a Verizon or Mandiant or somebody like this might come in and perform a third-party forensics analysis of the same things that we did. And and that happens quite a bit. I will say I did work for a small consulting company, a small medium business consulting company. We had 4 employees, and we did some civil, legal forensic stuff. But we really had one expert in it, and the rest of us were just helpers, you might say. But it was a good start. It was a good peek into that, kind of my first forensics, exposure, you might say, and I learned a lot from it, even though I didn't get to do a lot. We would go out and take the images and kind of start the process and do the kind of the legwork, but we didn't get to do the analysis work at that company I worked for. But I learned a lot of things around chain of custody and different parts of it. So just because they're small doesn't necessarily mean you don't do forensics, but you would definitely need to make sure you're in the right area for that. That would be my
Nice. Geraldine, do you have anything to add there?
I would agree with him. I think the key thing to know is what your areas are. Like I said, we do civil only, no criminal. We will do after the fact analysis of incident response, but we're not a live incident response group. So I think that's absolutely critical to know what you can do and what you can't do, and size can or can't be relevant. Could I add a PS on the technologies, because I was thinking when Josiah was talking, we didn't really talk about some of the other options out there. There's Kali, K-A-L-I, Linux, that people are using these days. Also on the Mac end of thing, Black Bag Technologies. There's another company called Katana, which has a less expensive alternative, and then there are various options for doing mobile, tablet, smartphone forensics. So it's really a huge range of tools depending on what your exact issue is. And I would echo that Internet Evidence Finder is another good tool. We haven't mentioned X-Ways Forensics, which is also in that same area. It does a variety of things. So you almost have to just get out there and start looking and seeing what they all do and what will best meet your needs.
Nice. And Josiah, you referenced Mandiant a couple of times. And I know that they had a recent acquisition. Maybe you can speak to the usefulness of some of their tools.
Yeah, from an incident response standpoint, a tool we use as kind of a level 1 triage all the time would be Redline. I don't know if folks have heard of that or not, but it definitely gives a quick peek, you might say, at a forensics level. A lot of times we'll, hey, something will be going on, we'll get a Redline image of a machine, dump memory, and kind of get a first pass. It does a first job. It's called Redline because it looks for processes or things that maybe don't fit a certain behavior, and so it'll redline those, and then kind of allow the analyst to work through them a little bit different. It's a pretty inquisitive tool. There's a very good written user manual to it. It might be 80 pages long. It's a little long, but really they just break down step by step the use of the tool. In fact, it's one of the better documented tools that I've seen. And a lot of times when showing people how to use it, I might just give a quick overview and then say, hey, go read the user manual, because in this case, you will gain, a high level of knowledge from reading it. And I would say that there is some potential using it, that there might be a little bit of dirtying of evidence, and so you would definitely want to be careful if you're using it in kind of a legal, criminal, those sorts of situations. But for incident response side, it's like, in the tool bag, it's it's something you can't kind of live without, sort of as the initial triage, and it's very easy for any level of user to install and use.
Absolutely. I would kind of add there that just a lot of the Microsoft free tools, certainly PS tools would be a good tool set that gives you a lot of visibility, a lot of things that you can do on a network that you're an administrator have the authorization to do so on. Something as simple as PS Exec that you can remote into a system, run remote commands on a system. The other things are, the task viewer, memory viewer, network viewer, some of the free Microsoft tools that you can download and run. Those are things that, if you run that and you're looking at processes that are running on there, process viewer, what does that mean? Tie that into where that's at in the registry, tie that into what service is running that is actually running that process. So I think that that's really important from a live running system to be able to understand what's going on and what tools can I use to see, more than the average user, to be able to open up Task Manager. You have that, but if you open up Process Viewer, if you open up Task Viewer and so forth, those things give you the advanced ability to look at that. And if you dive into that, that's really a great learning opportunity to see that tie the process into the service or into where that's at in the registry.
Can I piggyback on something you said there?
Yeah, please.
Another just an interesting thing that we like to do sometimes is a tool like you said, like maybe if I'm going to use PS Exec or PS Viewer or one of these is fire up a virtual machine or a physical machine, it doesn't matter, and take a forensics image of it and then set that aside, then load a tool like PS Exec and make some connections on it, and then take another forensics image and then look for the differences, look for the fingerprints of some of those tools. It doesn't matter what the tool is, it could be anything. You can just download sometimes you go to CNET and we'll just download tools and if you're playing around or trying to show people how to, just kind of look at stuff in memory or whatnot, it's the inquisitive mindset, it just feeds right into that.
And I teach in a community college. I teach one of the classes is forensics, and one of the things we do there, which any of us could do, is just go out and get a VMware player and put that on your system. Go out and download Kali Linux. Download that, install that, run that as your operating system, and then within that you already have so many tools, not only general Linux tools, but hacking tools, forensics tools that you can learn, play with, and just try some of these things that they're talking about. Fire up multiple systems on a internally isolated network and just play with that. Another thing that I would recommend from a network level, and that is a sniffer. Get a sniffer. Fire up something like a free firewall, like a pfSense or a MonoWall, which are free firewalls, and just run a packet sniffer on your network and look at the packets. See what the nature of normal network traffic is. You see DNS requests, you see NetBIOS requests, you see authentication requests. Are these normal or are these not normal? This kind of knowledge, I think, is very important to have, both to operate a network and to also understand security and eventually forensics as well. What's going on in the network, and look at a packet. Look at the actual packet itself and see what does that mean. If you look at all those zeros and ones, what does that mean? How is a normal packet configured? Is this a buffer overflow attack? Can you see that in the packet level? So those are things that I also recommend students do to become familiar with that. Look at the registry. What's a normal registry setting? If you look at a Mandiant Redline, it'll point to some of those indicators of compromise on a system. And then you look at that registry and you start to see somebody like a Josiah can take that Redline output and can tell you within 5 minutes if you've got a potential compromise of a system or not. So, that's the type of thing that sort of puts a rubber to the road as far as what do these people who are experts in their field know, and as a entry-level person, how do I get to that point? That's really how they got to that point. Well, they see these tools, they look at this output, and they really understand what they're looking at. I think that really speaks to their expertise. And how do we get the most of the questions that we've been receiving have been kind of, how do I get into this business? How do I get educated so that I can become a forensics expert or a security expert? And I think we've been speaking to a lot of that here today. As far as the education they could get, certifications they can get, some of the things that they could be doing to learn on their own, and kind of going back to what I said before. All I'm doing is teaching a basic college class at community college, and it's going to result in an associate's degree. But in order to get that degree, certainly if they specialize or major in security, the forensics class is one of the things they have to take. So, even in your local community college, if you just have a high school education, you can go get an associate's degree in security specifically, and a lot of times they'll have some forensics classes in that as well. And that's some really good knowledge to have. The next question I have really is around continuing education, a question that we have about continuing education. How do you kind of keep yourself informed in this business as things change so much? What conferences do you go to? Geraldine, you want to start with that one?
Yes. We found that a really good organization is called the High Tech Crime Investigators Association, HTCIA. One of the best things about it, in my opinion, is that you have a listserv, so you have access to people who are doing this for a living. And I know there's also, I think, a Yahoo group. HTCIA has a convention every year, and it's one of the more affordable conventions. And then there's InfraGard, which is kind of has a variety of things. Here in Houston, there's a Technical SIG, which is a good source of information. And then there's sort of overlapping professional associations like ISSA and ISSA. Number of blogs online that are good sources of information. Some people write books, and they're good to have. Sadly, as you know, the books are going to be out of date almost as soon as they're published. But again, and one more organization that's good that publishes proceedings that's very much on the cutting edge is called the Digital Forensics Research Workshop. I think that's in DFRWS. And they have a conference every year and put out information. Then there's DEFCON, which is very affordable in Las Vegas in the summer. Black Hat, which is a little more expensive. Kind of the sky's the limit.
Yeah,
Josiah?
I think. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, in general, I have 2 or 3 different email. I have a Google group that I get some kind of digital forensics data from, and then I'm also a member, of the SANS deferred kind of email group. What I've done is kind of taken those into the free instance of Splunk, and so that I can quickly search back. There'll be. I love kind of looking at different people have use cases where they have trouble doing something, and today you're like, oh, I'm never, that's nothing, that I'm going to be doing. And then, 3 weeks down the road, you're like, oh, I'm doing that, and I need to, study up on that very specific area. And I think we've alluded to it a couple times, but it's just so broad, even within digital forensics, from smartphones to Macs to, servers to Unix to, there's just so many different pieces. And so I'm out always trying to learn something new. I attend some of the, the SANS, just other Rapid7, some of the web continuing education events as they're kind of sent out the webcasts, and I try to find ones that pique my interest. Some things, deal in forensics, some things deal in everything from firewalls to something different, but you never know when your forensics case or an incident, in my case, a lot of times might take you to those devices. And so the more kind of knowledge you have and the constant gain of knowledge, and the constant curiosity is kind of what I use, or kind of what I do in the CE or continuing education world. The other strategy I've had is try not to get too many certifications, because then I have to, from a money standpoint, I have to maintain all these certifications, which is sometimes can be tough. one of my favorite, my favorite conference to go to. And so I kind of shy away from the DEF CON black hats. Not saying that they're not good; they're excellent, but they're pretty public and very big. And I try to go to the little cons. I really like the DerbyCon out in Louisville. That's probably my favorite. It's a little more hacker-esque, you might say, but it's real fun, and Louisville's a good town. And then I try to, in the local community, there's always something going on, from an OWASP meeting to an ISSA or ISACA, all those that were mentioned. Somebody's always doing something, and it might not be in the very world of forensics, but it might be something in web servers or web applications, and you never know if you really want to kind of mature your security side. You just want to go out and gather all that knowledge, as well as the other good thing of those events is you get to network with people and just talk to other people that have the same sort of challenges or learning objectives as you do.
Excellent. And I want to second Josiah's comment on DerbyCon. Coming from Louisville, Kentucky for the last 8 years, I can vouch that DerbyCon is, if you are able to make DerbyCon, it is probably one of the best conferences you could attend. And as he said, it is a little hacker-esque, but they do have a lot of fun there. They have some phenomenal folks come in there and speak, and it's a great learning opportunity. Another gentleman that helps run that is Adrian Crenshaw, and he has a site called irongeek.com. irongeek.com, and he has is one of these guys that printer companies will send him printers, or USB manufacturers will send him USB sticks, and he will take them apart. He'll kind of explode the firmware, and he'll send back and say, hey, you had a vulnerability in your firmware, and then he'll do a review of them. He also does a lot of videos where he kind of goes through an exercise, whether that's a forensics or a hacking exercise or an incident response, and then he'll video that and he'll put that up on his website, and kind of so that you can see the steps. It's a very educational website as well for that. So and he's one of the co-founders of DerbyCon, so that's very good. I want to touch on a question here that came from a viewer, sort of a follow-up. Is there a methodology that you use in forensics, speaking specifically maybe of ISO or NIST? Is there a general methodology that you kind of build your what you do around? Geraldine?
We don't use the ISO. We do use NIST resources, and then there's another organization called the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence. Their website is www.swgde.org. And then there's the Sedona conference that also has some useful information, and then again a number of books. I would say the issue with these one-size-fits-all, I'm not saying that ISO is that, but a single methodology, I'm not sure you can have a single methodology for all incidents or instances that you're looking at. If you go to SWGDE and look at, for example, their mobile phone, smart or mobile devices, it's so general because they're trying to do everything in a single document. It's
Right.
It can be not as useful. So we have an approach that's, I guess, based in part on experience and in part on all of these resources. But NIST and SWGDE would probably be the places that I would start with.
Mm-hmm. Good. Josiah?
Yeah, I second that. NIST, kind of the NIST framework is what all of our processes are built around, and then depending on kind of where it branches from there, it depends, and all of our stuff's kind of in-house developed processes, but and that's just because, for like Geraldine said, from one if you're doing a smartphone of this type, there might be other considerations that weren't taken. Or if I'm doing a Unix server that's BSD versus Unix server that's Ubuntu, I might have to follow some different steps. And there's just so many different avenues of approach. But in general, we just have kind of worked through, at a high level, I guess you could say, we kind of go and put together all our paperwork and our jurisdiction documents, you might say that we can do what we're going to do kind of ahead of time, and then we kind of, I guess the highest level I could say is gather and analyze, and then peer review. Those kind of the 3 high-level steps. So gather the evidence that we're looking at, analyze that evidence, and then we do kind of peer review with other folks on our team or whatnot to make sure that we're analyzing data the right way, or we didn't miss a step. Sometimes the best folks, it's easy to miss something easy, and especially when you get in the what do they call in the old days, the shell vision, or you get in the console and you're hammering away and you miss something or see something, and it happens to everybody. And so so I'd say at a high level, that's kind of the steps we follow. But yeah, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, it's really a NIST-based customized approach.
Nice. Another thing that's sort of peripherally related to that, and kind of in the forensics class and the EC Council's Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator certification, completely getting away from the technical side of this, a site that I would recommend folks go to, it's federalevidence.com, federalevidence.com. And if you go to that website, at the very top in the drop downs, you see one called Federal Rules, and then Rules of Evidence. And if you go to that particular site, you can read the hundreds and hundreds of rules around federal rules of evidence that they have, and you get into some of the things like how do you define an expert witness, how do you make sure that you're following the chain of custody. And these are all things that in a court of law, if you have to present your evidence that you've attained, digital evidence, you're going to have to understand what these are. So it's really good, boring to read, but unless you're a lawyer, but certainly something that if in the field of forensics you want to make sure that you're familiar with, and that these folks here have to make sure that they follow. We are about 25 minutes to the end here. I did want to sort of ask you 2 more questions. One is to both of you, if you could just think of one book or website that is good reading for folks that might be on the call that you can think of. Do you have a good book or a good website that one that you might refer them to? Josiah?
Oh man, why you gotta put me on the spot like this? There's a really good Windows Windows kind of evidence, everything Windows book, a forensic book. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now. Give me a second, I'm gonna get the name of it. But the forensics wiki, I really like out there. And from, I guess if it was, the other one that I'm constantly at, I find myself at somehow or another getting rerouted to is the SANS, digital-forensics.sans.org. There's all sorts of documents, processes, people, outlining different things, and I just think there's really good. I mean, I read out there every day. I try to make a morning read through some stuff, and it's just like faster than I can read it. There's new articles and new studies and white papers, and so I really like that. But I'm gonna find that book name. Hold on 1 second. It's on my shelf. I just grab it. I can't remember the exact name. Hold on. Gives Geraldine a chance to answer.
Yeah, Geraldine, do you want to answer?
Well, of course, you just draw a complete blank. I think I would echo Josiah that the SANS has a blog, and there's a lot of really useful information there. They have some charts, which of course if you're looking at it on a monitor it's hard to read, that are good resources for things to look at, like sort of not a checklist exactly, but a place to start. The other thing would be just to go to a website like Amazon and do digital forensics and see what's being purchased by people. Same thing, give me a second and I'll do the same kind of thing that Josiah's doing. But Ian Casey, Brian Carrier, those are two names. Gary Kessler has a good website, formerly with Champlain College. And there's, Windows, that same book that he was referring to, Windows system, there's file system forensics, but then there are, all of the other books that you almost have to have, one for Mac, one for CDs and DVDs. People still use that, just the whole range. Syngress is a publisher that has a lot of really good books, and then the other one that has the little critter on the front. While he's looking up his books, if I could say one extra thing about certifications that I neglected to mention, this isn't true across the United States, but for example, in many states, including the state of Texas, if you do what we do as an independent consultant, not working within a company and not working for, say, a law firm or a accounting firm, you have to be licensed as a private security company by the state. And to do what we do, I have to be actually a PI. I'm a private investigator licensed by the state of Texas in order to present evidence in court. So the other thing you have to pay attention to, even if you're just going to do this, part-time on your own, is to check the state laws to make sure that that you're doing it in the way that you need to do it. One other random thought I had, you were talking about knowing what's normal and what isn't normal. One of the nice things I think about being like working at a large company like, say, Chevron or Schlumberger or Waste Management, most of those companies have a standard build of systems, for example, not necessarily, they have BYOD, but let's just say they're laptops. You have a better chance, like you said, starting out on the help desk, looking at how the systems, all of the systems are built and work. Then you get that knowledge that you were describing of what's normal, what's not normal. So you have, I think, an advantage being able to get access to that information and then be able to look at it.
Right. I agree. And one of the books that I had on my shelf for a really long time was Windows Operating Systems Essentials. I can't remember who published it or who wrote it, but it was, for me, what Josiah spoke about at the beginning, which was that curiosity or that aptitude for computers, because that was probably the driest book that I've ever read, but it probably was one of the most valuable books in that really understand how does Windows specifically work, how does the registry work, how is the operating system, because we all see a pretty screen with a lot of functionality and buttons we can click on, but how does that really work in terms of the system that drives that, and how does it interface with the hardware? How does it interface with the network level? I ask a question in my class quite frequently, and even folks who have gone through the networking can't answer this question. But when I take a Cat5 cable plugged into my computer and I plug it into a network port in the wall, walk me through what happens. How do I actually get to the point where I can connect out to the network and also out to the internet? Walk me through that process. And if you really can't give a good explanation of that, then you've got more work to do. You've really got more knowledge to build. ARP, how does it talk to the switch? How does it get an IP address? What about DNS? These things are really important to understand, just how a computer works by itself from the operating system level to the hardware. How does it talk to the network? What about the operating system, the OSI model? How do computers talk to each other? How do they get out to the internet? What do they do when they talk to the internet? TCP/IP, ports. These things are all really important to have that foundation before you can get to the point where you're somebody like a Josiah or a Geraldine. You really have to understand how these things work So I would recommend building that foundation, getting the experience in the field, and then you get to the point where you're very good, and then people will call on you and say, hey, I need some forensics done, and you're the most obvious person because you have that knowledge, right?
Hey, Randall, I remembered that. I shouldn't say I remembered. That's an inaccurate approach. I was able to find the name of that book, File System Forensic Analysis by Brian Carrier. And man, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's dry. It can be real dry when you're reading about MFT, master file tables, and whatnot. And I remember back in college going through this computer science course, and I can't remember the name, but calculating the speed at which a disk spins to write data on it. But sometimes it's like that, if you want to get down to kind of how stuff works. Another good, I said SANS before, and I have a lot of SANS training, so a little bit different background, but they have a thing called cyberAces.org. It's put on by SANS. I'm not really sure the whole background workings, but I send it to a lot of people who are like, I kind of want to get into security, or security. It's not necessarily just forensics, but just how things work at a security layer, breaking down networking, breaking down some scripting. What is scripting? Breaking down Windows, breaking down Linux. Just kind of walks you through these little modules, and it's kind of just a good little self-study. And if you go to tutorials.cyberaces.org, it's out there, and it's like I said, it's not forensic based per se, but everything, as I tell some people, everything is forensics based because you got to kind of know from the beginning how things work. So and there's some good tools emerging that we've been using lately in the PowerShell realm, and so there's some good. Microsoft has a really good kind of digital academy that's all free, and they walk through everything. I mean, you pretty much, if it's made by Microsoft, they pretty much go through it from they kind of have the crawl, walk, run approach, the beginner, advanced, or intermediate, advanced approach. And so if you're just always looking to learn, that's some just general good IT world stuff. And then, really, you got to have kind of that foundation before you kind of build the forensics piece on top of it. So, anyway.
Can I hop in with the one I couldn't think of the name of? I echo what Josiah said about Brian Carrier's book, and then the one I couldn't think of was Harlan Carvey, his book, Windows Forensic Analysis, and he also, I think, has a blog. And then there's another book on open source, digital forensics with open source tools. So those three would be really good places to start. Another thing I wanted to mention that Josiah's learning things and what you said too, I think if you are not comfortable at a command line, you need to get that way. And if you are going to add to your skill set, learning Perl and Python would be two good things to learn.
Nice. Absolutely. I did want to restate the link that Josiah had mentioned. It is tutorials.cyberaces, cyberaces.org, tutorials.cyberaces.org, and then you can go to /tutorials on that. Okay. So we have about 15 minutes, and I have one more question, and then we will wrap it up. I think this is the most important question of the day, and I hope that you all watch this show. It's called CSI Cyber. So I watched the show, and my wife hates it when she watches with me because she said it's kind of like watching ER with a doctor, because pretty much everything that they do on there, I'm kind of calling out as inaccurate at least. So I wanted to kind of take the last few minutes here and see do you watch that show, and if you do, how much, what do you think of that show? How much of it's real? How much of it's fantasy? And do you think that show is valuable for security education, security awareness? Josiah?
Unfortunately, I don't watch that show. I can't find time for TV. I'm more of a reading books sort of guy, more of a computer playing around sort of guy. But I would say in general, without having watched it, that probably things happen a little quicker there than maybe they do in the real world. Just from other maybe common CSI-ish type shows. And that there's maybe a glorified sense. I'm just giving a generalized. I guess I can't really accurately say what they do there or not, but just in general, the CSI shows, or I've watched other computer, like the movie Hackers or something that comes out, and it's like, they're not running around with guns, they're on their computer, getting busy, so, I guess that's the best I could give you. Sorry.
That's okay. Geraldine, do you watch that show?
I try not to. I get so frustrated with it. Yeah, I wish we could do things as quickly and as perfectly as they seem to. That would be, wonderful. Especially, there's a joke that, what we all want on our computers is the find evidence button. You just press that and then it comes up. But that's sort of what they do. And I do find it difficult to watch. Here's what I think that it does, though. Some of the cases that they take on, I think, are raising awareness for people who just don't, like, really, is that possible? Can you really do that? Some of it's a little, maybe at the edge, but yeah, people need to be thinking about some of these things. I mean, at the last DEF CON, there were car hack presentations. Now, they took a little doing to hack them, but nonetheless, this stuff happens. So I think if it gets the message out that you really need to do things like lock down the Wi-Fi at your house, and think about these things and be aware of it as an issue instead of, I don't really have anything, I don't need to worry about it. I think it's valuable in that way.
I agree. Some examples of some of the episodes that they have had, and one of the reasons why I bring this up, and I do think it's a valuable show for those of us who aren't really in IT security, and that is that they bring that level of awareness and they kind of use those terms that we would use, and they apply it to sort of a fictional, and they do have a lot of artistic license and stretch it quite a bit. But I do think one of the episodes where they had an evil twin router, somebody had shipped in with FedEx, and they were using a battery pack. So they had a router that was programmed to the exact same SSID that the company used, and folks would connect to that router, and then when they did that, the hacker was able to sort of man in the middle, sniff the traffic, get passwords and so forth. So although that would be pretty difficult to do and far-fetched, that is an example of a real-world thing that we do have to look out for evil twin routers. They've had examples of where someone has hacked the firmware of a device. Most recently, it was a medical device, and they took that reality and they stretched it as far as you could potentially stretch it. But they did hack the firmware of a medical device, and doing that, they were able to kill patients by increasing their medication. They were able to take over several parts of the hospital and so forth because these were networked medical devices. So that is a real-world problem that they do sort of glamorize and fictionalized, but that's another example. The car hack is another they just did, I think, last week. So I think that those are really good to the general public, make them aware these things are real. They do have to be concerned about it. If they connect it to the internet, they are opening up a big can of worms. And hopefully the folks here on the call, as we progress in our careers, we become experts in the field, and we can contribute to that sort of mission of security, which is try to make things more secure for our company, certainly for our own families, for our own devices, for Geraldine's sake, for the folks that, contract with her, and then Josiah and myself, we work for a hospital system, so we do have quite a few risks that we have to manage, and we do that using technology. We also have risks that are due to the use of technology, and the example of the medical device is a good example of that, because they use more technology today to do things in business and certainly in healthcare. We have a lot more risks and we have a lot more work to do. That's why we have teams of folks like Josiah and that's their job, is to make sure we do these things in a secure way. So, Josiah, Geraldine, do you have anything to wrap up? Any comments to wrap up with? Geraldine, I'll start with you.
I'm just glad for anyone who's listening now or watches this later who has an interest in this field, because if you look at the job openings in security and in forensics, there's an ongoing need for people who are interested in learning more about it to learn more about it and hopefully get involved.
Absolutely. Josiah?
Yeah, I would agree. And right now it's there just isn't enough folks. Almost good security folks. Whether that's forensics or even firewalls or route, whatever. Just the world of security. The job market looks well. And everything. Just kind of a point when you were talking about the show there that I haven't seen, but everything that can be used for good can be used for bad, and some of the best intentions, and every time there's a good intention for something, there's somebody out there trying to use it for a bad intention, and and unfortunately that just probably isn't ever going to change. And this is an exciting field, an exciting career field, and if you're inquisitive, or if you really like to learn, and if you just want to drive deep into stuff, and critical thinking, and attention to detail, and those sorts of traits describe you. This is definitely what I would consider the field, and there's bunches of specialties within it too. We've talked about many times on the call so far. Hey, if you like phones and smartphones and that thing, there's a whole world there. And as the world moves into this mobile tablet, workforce-driven, anywhere kind of idea, how do you secure that, and how do you do forensics around that? And I was teaching a risk class over in Slovenia earlier this year, and we were watching this video from McAfee Labs where that smartphone app that essentially would record everything you said, and and you just have to just everything that can be used for good on your phone, it can be used for evil, So I just think it's exciting. It makes me excited. I like doing this stuff. So I guess that would be my kind of chaotic closing thoughts.
Very good. Very good. Yes, that's excellent, and I think that speaks to sort of the goal of the career cybersecurity career life cycle, which is the program that has spurned this meetup, the virtual meetup program. Really, the goal of that is to help the pre-professional entry-level folks learn and progress in their career, and hopefully we're filling that gap, that shortage of expertise that we have in this industry. Before we wrap up, I do want to thank our panelists. Geraldine, Marta, she was actually teaching a class, and she closed her class early so she could jump on with us. So we really appreciate you taking the time and making the effort to be on with us, and we appreciated your expertise and your comments. I also want to thank Josiah. Josiah did not know about this until about an hour before. We called him in because we had a cancellation. So we greatly appreciate Josiah scrambling to be on here, and certainly amazing commentary in addition to value to the call. So thank you again, both of you, for attending and for participating in that. I also want to thank everyone who has joined as an attendee. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your questions. I hope it was a very valuable experience for you, and hope that you will go back and look at the past meetups if you didn't attend those. There were several that have been on the ISSA's YouTube channel that you can listen to if you're interested. Also look forward to future events from the Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle Virtual Meetup Program. I did want to let you know that we will be having a post-event survey. It's just 9 questions. It will be posted in the chat and also on the YouTube channel. Just to go on there, take a minute, fill that out, rate your experience with this event. Give us your feedback. We will take the respondents from that and enter them into a raffle for an Amazon gift card. So that's very cool. If you have any additional questions, If you'd like to ask any of these speakers or any information about this program, please contact Leah Lewis, and that's lewis@issa.org, lewis@issa.org. And if you want more information on the ISSA Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle Program, please visit the ISSA.org. Once again, I want to thank our panelists and all the audience for attending, and I hope you had a great experience and hope you have a great evening. Thank you very much.